For 3 years, the secret lived in plain sight, hidden not by lies but by silence. It wasn't buried in scandal or chaos, but wrapped carefully inside a version of normalcy no one questioned. That's why the moment it surfaced, the reaction wasn't just shock, it was disbelief. Dakota Johnson had carried something far bigger than anyone imagined, and the world was only just catching up. The timeline alone was enough to unsettle people. 3 years is not a fleeting mistake or a brief lapse in judgment. It's a sustained choice, a long stretch of time during which every public appearance, every interview, and every carefully chosen word carried extra weight. Looking back now, fans began to wonder how many moments they had watched without realizing what was being concealed. What made the revelation explode globally was how ordinary everything had seemed. Dakota's public image over the past few years was calm, controlled, even serene. There were no dramatic meltdowns, no erratic behavior, no obvious warning signs. That quiet consistency became the perfect cover, allowing a major truth to exist without drawing attention to itself. The first cracks appeared through details that didn't quite align. Small inconsistencies that were easy to dismiss on their own began forming a pattern. Dates didn't line up, statements felt carefully worded, certain topics were avoided with precision rather than discomfort. Individually, none of it mattered. Together, it told a different story. As those pieces surfaced, fans reacted in waves. The initial response was denial, a refusal to believe that something so significant could go unnoticed for so long. Then came the anger, not necessarily at Dakota herself, but at the realization of how easily perception can be shaped by absence rather than truth. Finally, curiosity took over, driving people to retrace every step of the last 3 years. Media outlets moved quickly, reframing past coverage with new context. Headlines shifted from admiration to investigation, from celebration to scrutiny. What had once been praised as privacy was now being questioned as concealment. The same silence that once earned respect suddenly felt heavy with implication. What turned the situation into a massive scandal wasn't just the content of the secret, but the discipline required to maintain it. Keeping something hidden at that scale doesn't happen accidentally. It requires planning, restraint, and a constant awareness of how every action might be interpreted. That level of control fascinated and disturbed audiences in equal measure. Global reaction intensified as the story crossed borders. This was no longer a Hollywood whisper confined to entertainment blogs. It became a worldwide conversation about trust, image, and how easily public narratives can diverge from reality. Fans from different cultures brought different interpretations, but the sense of shock was universal. As the story unfolded, another question grew louder. Who else knew? A secret maintained for 3 years rarely belongs to one person alone. Speculation swirled about inner circles, professional obligations, and unspoken agreements that might have helped keep everything contained. Each unanswered question added fuel to the fire. What complicated matters further was the absence of immediate clarification. Dakota did not rush to explain or defend herself. That silence, once familiar, now felt charged. Some interpreted it as strategy, others as overwhelm. Either way, it ensured the conversation would continue without resolution. By the end of the first day, the scandal had taken on a life of its own. Clips were reanalyzed, quotes reinterpreted, and past interviews stripped of their original context. The narrative shifted rapidly, shaped as much by audience projection as by emerging facts. The truth, whatever it was in full, seemed almost secondary to the impact of its exposure. What remained undeniable was the shift in perception. The image of Dakota Johnson that had existed for years no longer felt complete. A new layer had been added, one defined by endurance, secrecy, and consequence. Whether seen as calculated or necessary, the 3-year secret changed how the world viewed her. And as the dust settled on that first explosive reveal, one unsettling realization lingered. If this truth could stay hidden for 3 years, what else might still be waiting beneath the surface? The scandal wasn't just about what had been exposed. It was about how much had gone unseen, and how fragile certainty really is once silence is broken. As the shock rippled outward, attention shifted from discovery to consequence. A 3-year secret doesn't unravel quietly. It pulls threads from every corner it touched. The question was no longer whether the truth had been exposed, but what it would change: careers, relationships, and the carefully negotiated space between public image and private life. For Dakota Johnson, the aftermath carried a weight that felt heavier than the reveal itself. Holding something this significant for so long reshapes how a person moves through the world. Every decision becomes layered, every answer calibrated. Those close to Dakota suggested the silence wasn't avoidance, but containment, a way to keep one part of life from contaminating another. That distinction mattered now, as critics questioned motive while supporters argued necessity. As more context emerged, the narrative began to splinter. One camp framed the secret as self-preservation in an industry that punishes vulnerability. Another read it as a calculated gamble, a belief that time would dull curiosity and normalize absence. Both interpretations shared a common thread: 3 years of silence is never accidental. Industry reaction revealed a deeper discomfort. Executives and publicists understand how narratives function, and this one had slipped their grip. Past coverage suddenly looked incomplete, not because it was wrong, but because it was missing a crucial layer. The realization unsettled a system built on access and proximity, reminding it that some stories remain closed by choice. Fans, too, were forced to reassess their role. Many admitted they had filled gaps with assumptions, mistaking familiarity for knowledge. The exposure felt personal because the investment had been personal. When expectations collide with reality, the instinct is to demand explanation, even when none is owed. The most debated aspect became timing. Why now? Why after 3 years of apparent calm? Analysts pointed to a convergence of factors: shifting career priorities, contracts concluding, and a cultural moment less tolerant of half-truths. The sense was that the secret didn't leak, it reached an expiration date. Silence continued to shake the aftermath. No immediate interviews, no clarifying statements. That restraint reframed the scandal as something to be absorbed rather than corrected. In a media cycle addicted to instant reactions, the refusal to rush felt almost subversive, forcing the conversation to slow and deepen. As days passed, the tone evolved from outrage to analysis. Commentators explored how long-term secrecy affects mental health, how public figures compartmentalize, and why disclosure is often judged more harshly than concealment. The scandal became a case study, less about one person and more about the mechanics of visibility. Behind the noise, a quieter truth emerged. Maintaining a secret for 3 years requires consistency, discipline, and a network of trust. It suggests intention, yes, but also endurance. The ability to carry something unresolved while continuing to perform, promote, and present a coherent public self. That endurance complicated simple moral judgments. Some supporters found empathy in that complexity. They argued that privacy isn't a lie, it's a boundary. Others remained unconvinced, pointing to the ripple effects on audiences who felt misled. The divide ensured the story would persist, not because new information appeared, but because values collided. What became clear was that exposure doesn't end a story, it transforms it. The secret's existence had shaped 3 years of perception, but its revelation reshaped the future. Projects would now be viewed through a different lens. Interviews would carry new subtext. Silence, once neutral, would be interpreted.